The movie and the book. Now, the movie adaptation of the book was really not very good. I don't know if you agree with me about that. How many of you saw the movie? Okay, so more of you saw the movie than the book. And you hear it said all the time that the movie is not as good as the book. This is certainly the case in this movie. And part of the problem with that movie is the casting of one of the two main characters, namely the woman detective from France, who plays the role of the skeptic as they go in search of this grail that her counterpart believes is real. And in the course of their adventure trying to track this thing down, and this is only part of the plot, others are in pursuit of the same thing. And she is very skeptical about the story that's being told, the narrative that surrounds this object that they seek to locate. And so she is this sympathetic character, the person who represents for you, the reader or the viewer, the person who is properly skeptical, requires evidence, right? Will not believe something without good reason. And I think that's a good thing. I find that very sympathetic. And so you're drawn into this affinity for that character, not only because she's skeptical, but she's attractive. You see this romance beginning to start between these two people, and you're hopeful that it'll work out. And, you know, all the things that are part of storytelling that build sympathy for a character are in this film. I think that they could have cast the character with somebody who seemed a little more mature and up to the job that she was supposed to do in the film, and so on. So I think it was a casting problem there. But that's irrelevant. The point is, it's clear that she's supposed to be this sympathetic figure, and a consequence of that is that you're supposed to share in her kind of natural skepticism and demand for good reason to believe this story before actually believing it. You got the picture? And so you are growing into this kind of skepticism as the movie progresses. Now, late in the movie, she and the other character are fleeing and end up at somebody's mansion. And it's the mansion of a kind of idiosyncratic scholarly type who has this massive library, and it's beautiful. I mean, I envy him his library, if not his hairdo. But here he is, and he projects education, knowledge. He's got all the symbols and all the accoutrements for that, right? I mean, this library, the very house, the wealth, the knowledge, the articulateness as he speaks, his advancement in years, all of this is telling you, the viewer, this is somebody you're supposed to be able to trust on things that he knows about. He's a specialist in this area about which she is a skeptic. Now here's what happens. During the course of their dialogue, she is saying, I'm still not convinced. He said, well, what about this? Well, I still don't know. What do you mean? You know, how about this problem? And he gradually takes each individual objection she has and offers a defeater for it and overwhelms her with evidence. And then what happens? At one point, she finally says, of course, I see it now. Now, if you have been sympathetic with this character all along, and you have conceded that she is for you a representative of your own requirements, that there be good evidence for the things that you believe, now she is your representative when she says, yes. And she expresses that her own intellectual curiosity is satisfied with evidence for something she had not been prepared to believe. You see what's going on there? Now, if you saw that movie, you probably weren't thinking about that. You probably weren't thinking, oh, they're trying to get me to go along with her now. Or you might have, but you might not have been thinking about the technique that's used to actually accomplish that purpose. And it is part of film. Now, I want to introduce you to the concept of a noetic structure. And I have to be brief about this, but it's a very elaborate thing. I mean, there's a lot to a noetic structure, but it includes everything you believe. Everyone in here has a noetic structure. It includes everything you believe. Everything. It also includes the history of your beliefs. It includes then a history of what you used to believe but don't believe anymore. It also includes the reasons you have for believing the things you do. Your noetic structure also includes your psychological relationship to your beliefs. How it is that you hold some beliefs more firmly and others with less conviction. It includes what conditions existed when the belief was produced. How the belief was produced. All of that is part of your noetic structure. Now here's why I have given you that simple definition or account of what it is. When you watch a film, you are being exposed to various conceptions of reality, different ideas about how things are, but also different ways to evaluate claims about reality. So you're being exposed to different accounts of how evidence works, or whether evidence matters even. And when this is going on, it just is a psychological fact that this becomes insinuated into your consciousness, sometimes on a kind of subliminal level, because you're not thinking about it, you're enjoying the film. You're there to be entertained. And what can happen is that there can be little slips, little subtle changes, I call them shifts, in your noetic structure. One little shift in your noetic structure could be as simple as this. I wonder if that's true. You never wondered that before. But now that you wonder it, that has become a feature of your noetic structure. The story of the Davinci Code is told that the Christianity that everybody has grown up with is not the real thing. It certainly isn't the only version of Christianity that we have to consider when we think about its actual historical development. And that, in fact, the Church and so-called Orthodox Christians historically have suppressed truths about versions of Christianity that were extant in the early centuries of the Christian Church and have as much chance of being true as the so-called Orthodox view. Now, you might not have ever heard that. And you might be thinking, gee, I wonder how it is that if there were other accounts of the gospel or of the Bible and what belongs in the Bible and what doesn't, these are questions of canonicity, even if you've not entertained these kinds of questions, now you are entertaining these questions and you're being asked to think about, well, now how did we get the Bible that we have? And you're being given an account of that that's different, really, than the truth, as I would say. Now, you might not believe this story that they tell you, but it makes you wonder, doesn't it? You stop and you think, well, I do wonder how in the world, then, we got the Bible that we have in the form that we have it. And I wonder what the answer is to this particular claim that's being made. And you know, if you're really just watching the movie, this question is usually pretty subliminal. And the problem with that is you won't go out and look for the answer. Because the question isn't before your mind in a very explicit way. And so there is just this subtle shift in your noetic structure. You haven't changed anything you believe. But now how you hold your beliefs has changed. Movies can do that. My goal today has simply been to help illustrate for you the powerful tool that film is to evoke sympathy and cause subtle shifts in noetic structures that should actually be followed up with conscious questions and careful study, but often are not, and thus have a powerful but subtle influence not only in the broader culture, but even on our own Christian minds if we are Christians ourselves.